We're Family Fest, giving our best, empowering families to be the pillars of society. Family Fest, bringing healing and rest to hurting families, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness. With God on our side, we're marching strong, looking out for hurting children all around, and helping good parents carry on. Standing united, we'll overcome. We're Family Fest, giving our best, empowering families to be the pillars of society. Family Fest, bringing healing and rest to hurting families, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness.
A very good evening to you. Welcome to this edition of Family Fest Barbados' live Facebook Live event. It's the 9th day of July 2020. I am Krista J. Paul, and it's such a delight to have you share with us this evening as we look this evening at what men need from women in order to make the family function successfully. What do men need from women in order to make the family function successfully? And we know that this is a topic that we've heard from the flip side, what men need from women, what women need from men, I beg your pardon. But today we're going to be hearing from the men, and I trust that you've been having a wonderful time with us at Family Fest Barbados. We want to say thank you to Family Fest and for the fantastic job that they've been doing. If this is the first event that you're joining us for, please make sure that you scroll right here on the Facebook page and take a look at the past events, the previous events, and of course, join for those to come. And to discuss the topic this evening, we'll have two gentlemen. I'm so honored to be able to have Minister Alex Roach here with us. Good evening to you, sir. How are you?
Good evening, Ms. Paul. I am doing very well. It's really an honor to be here and have the opportunity to share with all of our listeners, all of our viewers who are tuning to Family Fest.
Yes. Well, of course, Alex Roach, you were ordained at the age of 20, and you've pastored Revelation Word Christian Center right here in Barbados. Served on the board of associate pastors at Morning Star Baptist Church in Boston, Massachusetts. Served with your spiritual father, Apostle Dr. T in Jamaica, and we're so glad to have you. And joining us will be Tony Olton. I believe Tony is actually with us now. All right, Tony Olton, fantastic. All right, so Tony Olton is with us, and he is a former educator, vice president of sales with a regional life insurance company, leading the sales Eastern Caribbean territories and Reserve Officer Force. And of course, he brings a rich background of training, leadership, and the management of group dynamics experience to his work as a people, leadership, business, and service excellence consultant. He's also a trained John Maxwell coach as well. And you wear so many hats, Tony. Welcome to this evening's event.
Thank you. Good to see you. Finally got on.
Yes. It's good. Thank God for that. All right. So let's begin by establishing some definitions. The topic again, what do men need from women in order to successfully have a successfully functioning family? Now, in our current and rather selfish world, where marriage as God intended is called old-fashioned, both men and women appear to be more career-driven than relationship-oriented, along with the virtual disappearance of the village to help raise children. The family unit seems to struggle most, with God at the center, the man as the head, and the woman as the helpmeet. How are we managing in the 21st century? And this is the foundation that we want to build on this evening. So Let's begin with some definitions, gentlemen. What can you say is the biblical definition of family? I'm going to start with Tony Olton.
Well, I think scripture is quite explicit that there is a coming together of the man, of the woman, for the purpose of becoming one, for regeneration of the humankind, for the training up of the humankind, for protection, and it becomes the model as to how the rest of society, whatever the function of the rest of society is, it becomes the model against which all the other aspects of society should model themselves.
All right.
But I'll go into a little bit more detail because I'm going to come from a different angle this evening, and hopefully that will give some encouragement. Yes, and a different framework to work with.
All right, fantastic. We look forward to that.
Sure.
Mr. Roach?
Yeah, I agree thoroughly with Mr. Olton that the Bible
My friends
has...
call me Tony.
Yes, Tony. With Tony, that the Bible has a blueprint for the family, what that family looks like, through Scripture, from Genesis through to the New Testament. We see God's blueprint and God's idea of family. Two individuals coming together, co-creating and raising up those children, their young ones, in the fear and the admonition of the Lord. It says, husbands, even as God laid a foundation for how the church ought to respond to its Christ. It said, husbands, love your wives like Christ loves the church, and women, submit to your husbands. He gives throughout Scripture a blueprint for what that family, the God type of family, looks like.
Right. So we're establishing, therefore, that, well, by virtue of the fact that in Genesis, God created man and woman, you're talking about procreation. You mentioned procreation and reproduction. So we're establishing the fact that family, on a biblical perspective, deals with a man and a woman. Correct?
Yes, most definitely.
All right. So given the fact that we've established that definition, what would you say is a successful family or successfully functioning family? Tony Olton, back to you. Tony? All right, well, Minister.
I was muted,
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Yes, go ahead.
And I pause because I'm wondering to myself, if we need to start there in terms of defining what is a successful family, or if we need to come back a little bit
Okay.
to understand how the game has been set up. And I use the term game to mean the original design. And I did say to you I was going to come from a slightly different perspective. Well, I'm going to seek to add to the understanding, not necessarily a slightly different perspective. So everybody quotes Ephesians chapter 5. Yeah, and what's the name? Alex quoted that just now. I believe that what Ephesians 5 is talking about is in what in nature is described as a symbiotic relationship, that the two becoming one means that there's to be a molding, a melding, a coming together. And that the characteristics of the one, how the one manifests, is really a blending. It is really a blending of the two. I mentioned the term symbiotic or symbiosis. At the highest level of operation, there is mutualism, and I think that's what Scripture is pointing to. No, I think that is what Scripture is pointing to. That the two must come together and function in one in ways that they support one the other. And so I've come to believe that when Scripture talks about husbands loving the wife and the wife honoring the husband, that really and truly they are one and the same thing. I've come to believe that very deeply. That for the man to love his wife, and I think I mentioned this the last time it was on, there has to be, as men, we would have to get to a place, if we were going to do it optimally, we have to get to a place where we function not for ourselves, but for the other. And that functioning creates a sense of safety, a sense of being cared for, a sense of being respected, and all of those things that we call, that would be embodied in this thing that we call love. The wife, in turn, in that circumstance, what she brings to the coming together of the one is demonstrating respect for that. And so the question that really shapes this evening's conversation is, what is it that men need? What men need is that sense of respect. That sense of respect is interpreted, is understood as love. What women need is love. And that experience of love through the selflessness, the caring, etc., that is experienced as love. But that comes out of the respect which the man has for his wife. So all along we've talked about the man loving his wife and the wife honoring her husband as two separate things. I've come to believe that they're one and the same. They're just expressed differently simply because we have the man and we have the woman. I'll leave that for the time being. Yeah, go on, you asked the question.
Okay, so you're saying that a man needs respect and a woman needs love.
Love. But when they are played out, they are both one and the same thing.
Okay, Minister Roach, you have something to add to that?
Yes, I totally agree with Tony's summarization of Ephesians as it pertains to this particular text, that when God is commanding the husband to love his wife, he also asks her to, as Tony puts it, to honor her husband, because it is with a deep understanding that what men need, what men crave for are those words of affirmation, that sense of accomplishment and the sense of getting the job done effectively. And they want someone to acknowledge their contribution, acknowledge their investment. You know, we live in a society where women, the dynamics, as Tony says it, the archaic dynamics are changing, where the woman was known as her homemaker, and she stayed home and she played that role. And now women, not just locally, but across the world, are taking, not just from an academic perspective, but from a professional and a career perspective, women are moving into positions and jobs that were predominantly known as positions and jobs that were held by men. Even locally, we see a rise, a surge of women not only performing at an accelerated rate academically, but also moving into positions of authority, positions of leadership as it pertains to their career. So if ever there was a challenge or an identity crisis, or have to be redefined the role of who a man is and the role that he plays in society. Now, it is important to also note that the family is the fiber of society. And here we have men now who are going through this new place, this new space where they have to find, because for a lot of men, it is very easy to associate your worth with your accomplishments, with what you own, with what the roles that you play within your family, within society, within your community. But one of the things that we need to understand as men, that we are not necessarily what we do. That what we do doesn't make us a man, add value to who we are. So we have men who are trying to find their place, their footing, their position in society, and while the roles are being redefined and being reshaped, I think that nothing lends to a man's development, a man's coming into his own, or I can call it his kingdom assignment, his full purpose and potential, that to being reaffirmed of that, being reaffirmed of his value, apart from what he does, apart from his idiosyncrasies, apart from his failures, apart from his past, apart from what he can, does, or cannot do. That respect talks so much about the kind of nurturing, the type of woman that sees a man's potential in respect to where he is in life, how much he makes, his education background. And I don't want to paint the picture at all that that every man in every relationship it has some level of shortcoming in a sense, but nothing lends to the development of a man more than being edified, built up, being affirmed with words and with actions. And that in its equivalent, as Tony mentioned earlier, it is very similar to the love and the expression of love that a man gives towards a woman.
Well, you've mentioned a few words together, respect and affirmation and acceptance. And, you know, just a simple Google search would have yielded these results as well, respect and affirmation and so on. Do you think that women are aware of what it is that men need today? Tony?
To a significant degree, I'd have to say no. And by the same token, I'd have to say that not a sufficient number of men fully understand what women need, and don't really understand how this thing called marriage is supposed to work. And I speak as someone who has failed at it, and is now seeking to be successful at it. I'm going to introduce the concept of the man as leader, that it is not by chance that verse 25 says, husbands, love your wives. I think that's very deliberate, in the sense that what that treats to in my mind is that it puts the man as the leader, not the person in charge, but the leader. Somebody said to me a long time ago that anything that has more than one head is a monster. So somebody has to take the leadership. But leadership has a specific connotation. So leadership says that we are going somewhere, that there's a certain light, there's a certain energy, there's a certain dynamism in this thing that we are seeking to build together. So somebody has to become the leader. And in today's context, we talk about shared leadership. So that it is possible that, let's say in the work environment, in the corporate environment, you have the CEO or you have the general manager, and you have a number of sub-managers, managers who are junior there. But depending on what project is being pursued, that CEO or that general manager allows others to lead on specific projects, but it does not take away from his or her overall leadership and responsibility for the team, for the organization. I think we can bring that over into the whole concept and the conversation we're having about marriage. That is, somebody has to lead. But leadership is not about lording yourself over. Leadership is about serving. And what we teach leaders is that at the heart of leadership is service. That the position you occupy is a position solely existing to enable others in their own development and in their own growth. Okay. So that if as men, we can understand that we occupy leadership not for ourselves, that it is not, that we are not defined by the position that we hold as leaders. We are defined in that leadership role, but to the degree to which we enable the growth, the fulfillment, allow those who follow us to live their potential, to be all that God has called them to be. So our roles as leaders, as men in our families, is not to lord the position, do you know who I am, but rather now to use that position to serve those who we have the opportunity to provide that leadership for.
Okay, thank you. Minister Roach, submission, word that seems to be such a, I don't want to say a curse word, but a problematic word. Do you think that women today understand their roles as the submissive one in the relationship? Based on the Bible, no, we know that we submit to each other, but based on what the Bible says, wives, submit to your own husbands. Do you think that women have that understanding today?
I referenced the dynamics being changed, where we have women moving into careers of leadership, positions of leadership, becoming professional women, breaking out of the mold, and rightfully so, of being only seen as a homemaker, to taking their rightful place as thought leaders, as organization CEOs, as consultants and administrators, even in our own country, Prime Minister. Now, it is just as it is with men who are going through a new season and a new cycle and having to find their rightful place and their rightful identity apart from what they do and what they bring to the table. Women now within the home constructs, because there's term that goes around being an independent woman, and that independent woman can take care of her own financial needs, can make decisions, and is a lady, and has those who work under her and gives instructions. Now, how does that woman transition from a place of authority, from running her life and running her world, to being a part of a family unit and understanding that who she is in the corporation, in mainstream or corporate workplace, it is not necessarily what she'll be demanded to bring in the home. Now, this is not downplaying gifts, talents, attributes, intelligence, skills, all of those disciplines that make her who she is, but understanding that it's much larger. The outcome, the goal, the end game is much larger than a single individual. It must be a team effort. It must be a team goal that one person, let's say in the relationship, one person decides, you know what, I think this is the way, what we ought to do in this situation. We both come together, we exchange our thoughts, we exchange our ideas concerning it, and then someone comes along and said, okay, if this is where we're going, then this is how we're going to get there. We're going to, so someone has to assume the role and the responsibility of strategizing. And Tony made mention of the man being the leader, the one who has the vision, the direction for the family, the direction for the household. This doesn't necessarily make the woman of less importance, or her contribution, any less significant. However, but it is seen, or is saying that as he has an input and he has the direction and the vision and carries and casts that vision for the family, the model that God has called that family to be in society, that she also has an input. She also says, women are so much more, in a lot of ways, more disciplined than men tend to be. So someone said that.
Well, it's better for a man to say it than a woman to say it.
Someone said, and another man said, a man may tend to spend what he makes, while a woman knows how to save for a rainy day. The man may set the vision, but the woman says, okay, now here's the wisdom on how we're going to accomplish what we need to accomplish. I don't think necessarily that it is a case of women not understanding what submission and how submission ought to work. I think that we do have wonderful wives and women who are in households, who are making contributions, who allow a man to lead, who allow a man to take charge and take reign. And they come alongside that man and they'll say, baby, I see what you're saying. I agree with what you're going. I support you 100%. And now here's a plan that can work to get us from where we are to where we need to go. And this is what is called sub-leadership. So it is not necessarily a case of one being lesser than. It is two playing different roles and functions within the family, within the household.
Well, I want to know, I was going to ask this question, and I see someone would have posed the question. How does a wife deal with a husband? It's written in dialect. I'm going to translate because I'm not going to attempt to speak Bajan dialect. How does a wife deal with a husband who is doing nothing that his wife can respect, or a wife who is not easy to love? I'll throw that question to you, Tony. How does a wife deal with a husband who is not doing anything that his wife can respect, or is not easy to love?
So I'm going to come back to the whole question of leadership, because again, leadership is not really understood by a sufficient spectrum of persons. Yeah, leadership requires followership. And so we get thrown by the word submission and how we treated submission today. But that submission means really allow that person to lead. Leadership is a choice you make. Followership is also a choice that one makes. So a husband has to choose to lead. He has to behave in leadership ways. If he's behaving in leadership ways, now let me pause for a while. That suggests to me, at the level of, in the context of marriage, that the husband and wife share a common understanding as to what the marriage is about, what's the purpose of the marriage, how the marriage is intended to function. That there's some level of understanding. It seems to me, I assume that there are shared values in that relationship. And so the husband is acting in ways that demonstrate, that say, that indicate, I am going to take the lead in us marching towards that desired state. Yeah? There's a book called Maximize the Moment by T.D. Jakes. And in one of the chapters, he talks about where we are coming together, and he's not making the comments in the context of marriage, but I think it is transportable. He says that you want to have relationships with persons, and he calls them 3D relationships, who are different than yourself, who are headed in the same direction as you are, and who are headed to the same destination, the same point. I think if we apply that in the context of marriage, that if when I get married to someone, as best as I can assess, are we different? And if we are different, do I have the capacity to value those differences? Are we heading in the same direction? So that is, do we share the same values? And are we heading for the same destination? Do we want the same things out of life? If those three are in place, then we have the recipe, the foundation for excellence in marriage. If they are in place and the husband is leading, it doesn't matter what he does. It doesn't matter if his wife is earning here and he's earning here. It doesn't matter if he works over here and she works over there. If there's that shared purpose, shared vision, shared purpose, shared values, shared destination, and there's a valuing of the differences that exist. And I'll go back to T.D. Jakes again. Wonderful material. He talks about the fact that he wants to assemble some board to achieve some objective, some project he had in mind. He said to the board, he formed the board, he invited these persons in his circle to join him on this board. And at this first board meeting, he said to the board, the day that I am the smartest person on this board, I need a new board. That's a phenomenal way of thinking. In other words, I use as an example to make the point. Am I threatened by the difference in Bayesian terms, her brightness, how sharp she is, her intellectual capacity that is? Am I bedazzled by her earnings or her status in society? Or do I value those, seeing how they add to this thing that we are collectively chasing together? So I'm really trying to move the discussion from the typical quoting of scripture that we do. I really take a little deeper dive to understand what it really means when it talks about, and that's why I began by talking about this symbiotic relationship. There are different kinds of symbiotic relationships, but the one we're really chasing today, this evening, is that mutual benefit, where we value one the other, heading in the same direction and for the same destination.
Wonderful. Well, we're already halfway through. We're at the halfway mark. I just want to welcome those who would have not joined us from the beginning of the session, as we're looking here at what men need from women in order to make the family function successfully. And we've looked at acceptance, respect, submission. Tony spoke about leadership versus followership. And we have another question here. Before I get to that, I just want to say that we are talking within the marriage context, of course, but what about those who are looking to get married? What about those who are looking at another chance at marriage? Tony, you mentioned that earlier in the session. You know, what would you say to those who are either looking to get married or remarry, so that, you know, they can have that of the coming together as one, and I'm trying to see what you said here, coming together to become one, to support each other. Mm-hmm. What do you give to those people looking to get married?
Go to work on yourself. Who are you? What is it that you're about? What is your purpose in the earth? A lot of the challenges we have in relationships, we have those challenges because we've not done that deep fundamental work on ourselves first. And I like the way Stephen Covey puts it, 7 habits of highly effective people. He says that private victories, self-control, self-discipline, self-regulation, self-awareness, and the discipline that flows from that. He says that private victories must precede public victories, that before I can be effective with other people, I must first be effective with myself. Before I can have effective relationships with other people, I must first be at peace with who I am and what it is that I'm about. But typically what happens is that two people come together, they're infatuated by each other. There might be some societal pressures, especially if you're coming up in the church, been there, done that. And so there's an expectation as young people, and you're spending so much time together, you know, you better get married. And so we come together, and first we don't know ourselves, and then it is difficult to know and learn each other because I'm still busy trying to figure out who I am and what it is that I'm about. So my first response is go to work on yourself. Before you entangle yourself, before you commit yourself into this long-term process of coming together as one, because coming together as one doesn't happen overnight. Before we become entangled in this lifetime commitment of coming together, really spend some time doing that deep, sober reflection on that most fundamental question: who am I? What makes me who I am? What are my preferences? What are my dreams? What are my goals? What are my values? Work that out so that when you go now looking for your partner, you are looking for someone who can now complement, add to that thing that you said that you are chasing. And so you become no more discerning, and you don't get married to the first person who winked at you or told you what a great cat you were.
There you go. Minister Roach, how important is it for people who are looking to get married to understand the successful functioning of the family and what men need from women prior to marriage?
I would say it is very, very important. I would say that the understanding the family dynamics, that marriage should not be based solely on love. I think that love is um, too in the air, too, it is not grounded. It needs, I think that when you're choosing an individual to spend your life with, to do life with, to pursue greatness with, pursue your dreams with, that it is a better barometer to marry and to make a decision based on purpose. And Tony referred to this earlier when he said to look at someone else's, what goals they have, what are their preferences, what are their qualities. I like to tell my young people that when you date, when you are courting, you're really you're courting to learn, to see how someone thinks. Every action, every disagreement, every every up, every high, every low, that you're observing how this individual thinks. You're deciding, you're learning how they think about money, how they think about their values, how they treat them, how they treat disagreements, how they treat conflict, how they treat trauma. You're learning and you're observing through the journey of courtship and dating how this other person thinks. And then you're deciding within yourself if the way that they approach life and the way they approach trouble and stress and trauma and betrayal and all these all these, the bad as well as the good, the way they approach it, if that it meshes and merges with how you respond to these things. Now, it is not necessarily that that the individual has to approach it in the way that you would. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I am saying that it has to fit together with the holistic view and outlook on life and with your purpose, because you can't tie yourself to someone. Look how many times we've had the horror story of individuals who fell in love with someone who pulled them down, kept them back, took their life off track. It is so vitally important for our youth, those individuals who are pursuing love, pursuing a life of marriage, a life within a family, to understand the necessity and the importance to, one, as Tony mentioned, develop yourself, work on yourself. Two, to have standards, to set standards, to have principles and values that you live by. And three, to demand that in the relationship that you're engaging in. It can't all be based on love. It can't all be based on feelings, on those butterflies that people refer to, but it has to be based on something more substantive, such as purpose, goals, and values.
Okay, fantastic. And to those who are looking to get married or married again, or to the wise. All right, so
can I take that a little deeper?
Okay.
Yeah, because Alex is right. You see, the challenge with functioning based upon our feelings is that feelings come and go.
That's it.
Feelings come and go. Yeah. What we call a feeling, an emotion, in the moment, only has a life of 3 to 6 seconds. And that is when you can't trust your feelings. Yeah? So it has to be more than, and he's right, it has to be more than just how you feel. There is a framework that describes love as an expression of two things, joy and trust. Joy means that I am having an experience, I am in possession of something, I am with someone that brings me deep, intense pleasure. And trust says that I am having something, I'm experiencing someone, I'm in a space that I want to draw close to.
No, Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so when people say that they've fallen out of love, what they're saying is, I am one of two things. I am no longer experiencing that intense pleasure, or I no longer want this person close to me.
Now,
And they can come and go in a flash. Those feelings of joy and trust and what we call love can come and go in a flash.
that's correct. I see a question here, and I'm going to ask that one before we get to the one that was asked before. What about two persons who started out with a love and a common purpose, but one of them changes along the way?
I've come to the view after all of these years that people don't fundamentally change. That very few of us experience any meaningful life change, in the absence of significant pain. By that I mean to say that people are always telling you who they are. Even in the early days of courtship. You're taught in counseling that courtship is the most fraudulent stage of a relationship, whatever the nature of the relationship, whether that be an intimate relationship or a business relationship, whatever kind. In other words, if people think they can figure out what it is you're looking for, they, like a chameleon, can shift and adapt. The challenge is we can't long sustain ourselves outside of our self-image, outside of who we really are, that deep inner life. And so let me tag that back to an answer I gave you earlier. I talked about going to work on yourself so that when you are now looking for that life partner, you're looking for someone to complement. So if you know who you are and you have a pretty good understanding of what is it going to take for another person to live with me and be a complement to me, you can very quietly, without saying anything, and by pure observation over time, watch, observe, look to see to what degree does this person manifest in ways that are in alignment with my own sense of purpose, my own sense of vision, my own sense of values. But I'm not going to discover that at our first date. I'm not going to discover that in a week's time. I have to watch that person over a sustained period of time. I don't verbalize it, but I know what I'm looking for, and I can observe behaviors. People fundamentally are who they are. So when you say that the person has changed, the person doesn't really change.
Okay.
It is that you didn't see, or you chose not to see what that person had been saying to you, showing you, demonstrating to you all along, because you were blinded by this thing that we call, by this thing that we call love.
No. Wouldn't you say though that people evolve over time, and whereas there are some inherent characteristics in an individual, those characteristics may not necessarily fully manifest themselves until maybe years within a marriage. And that person can say, you know what, I can actually do this thing. I can actually go out into the world, and I can be successful and try to balance this at the same time.
Yes, that can happen. I have a colleague who is now in her mid to late 60s. Last year sometime, she had a moment that just blew her away. Parents have died, and she's now going through some family documents. And she came across a school report that was sent home to her parents when she was age 5. And that report at age 5 described my friend and colleague exactly and precisely as she is today at age 60 plus. We went, wow. We fundamentally, you see, there's personality and there's character.
Right.
So how we manifest in the earth over time is a function of our genetic coding, a function of our psyche. That's how we were raised, our birth order, our physical characteristics, and the conclusions we've come to about life. They say that 50% of how you present as an adult was in place by the time you were 2 years old. 85% of how you present as an adult was in place by the time you were 7. So yes, there might be 1 or 2 modifications, shifts, but significantly how you present as an adult was in place a long time ago. 1, 2, and it was in place without your conscious awareness and or approval.
Okay.
And so I want to go back to the other comment I made earlier. That is why you have to spend so much time understanding yourself, 1, and then 2, deciding what you want the rest of your life to be about. Because the life you've lived up until the life you have lived up until the point you have said, this is what I want the rest of my life to be about, is a life that was determined, is a perception of self, an understanding of life that was determined long before you came into yourself. In fact, I recently watched a presentation, Joe Saxon, if you can get your hands on it. And she asked 3 questions. And the first question he asked was, who were you before you were told who you were supposed to be? And you were told who you were supposed to be when you were 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 years old.
All right. That thought, Tony. That's food for thought right there. That's food for thought. Oh my, I don't want to skip over this question. It would have come in earlier, and I'm going to direct it to Mr. Roach. These ideals to are not religious, whether Christian or otherwise. How do we reach families, men or women, with the understanding of their roles, especially when they are not keen on the religious teaching? Minister Roach.
Okay, I think in my in the introduction, I started by saying that that the family is the fiber of the society, that the model and the quality of families that you have within the society is a smaller reflection of the kind of society that you will have over time. So these principles, these values that we're perpetuating are not just limited to individuals who are religious, Christian, spiritual, but they transcend even the religious thoughts and the religious views that we hold. That if you're going to live a quality life, as Tony was saying, you have to practice self-introspection. That if you're going to build a meaningful relationship, a healthy and happy family, a home, that you have to be judicious in the type of individuals that you lend your time, that you lend your finances, that you lend yourself to. You can't. It's almost like you're planting seeds, and if you plant in good ground, you're promised under the right conditions that you're going to reap a good harvest. And if you plant in bad ground, or the conditions aren't right, then you hardly have a harvest at all. And that's just a principle that governs the universe. The same are with family. That while it is true that Christ has a blueprint for how family ought to, what family ought to look like and how they ought to perform, that it is very much also true that we within our experience and within our own studies and our skills and with all that we do and all that how far we've came, that we're lending to you thoughts that have been derived from, that have been tested over time, that the type of family is a result of the type of individual. You don't marry for potential. You don't marry someone who is you hope, you wish. They either have the raw ingredient to manifest their walk in it, their values. All right, that's what he said. A person doesn't change. It's already set from the time they're a child, and either they possess it or they don't. And that's not a spiritual concept. That's not a religious concept. That is a universal truth just as the laws of sowing and reaping and day and night is also true for the family.
Right, interesting. So if it depends then on how one is raised, because you and I may have been raised differently, different backgrounds. Our concept or views of family, life, and marriage may be different, but it's important, as Tony said at the beginning, to have somebody who we can mold with and become one with and support each other. Now, I actually did a little survey. I said I was going to do it near to the end of the program, a little survey of wives. And, based on our discussion, I think it's good to see if we have related a good understanding of what it is that men need from women in order to make the family function successfully. Now, in this survey, I would have, asked maybe a few dozen wives, ranging in marriage years from maybe 3 years to 50+ years of marriage. And it was interesting seeing the responses. Respect, intimacy, support, friendship, delicious meals, a listening ear, to know their wives are with them 100%, to admire him, prioritize him, show him that you're in need of him, love, trust, respect, affirmation, intimacy, and the common threads are just what we spoke about at the very top of the program: respect, acceptance, but we didn't mention intimacy, but they actually mentioned those as well. And it was interesting to see those common threads and to see that they have these thoughts. As we wrap up, what men need from women, do you think that these characteristics are fundamental in the marriage in order for it to function successfully, based on everything we've said so far, based on the fact that we need to support each other and so on? Respect, intimacy, affirmation, and encouragement, are those really the fundamentals?
Those are the seeds. Alexa Snow talked about farming, we love the harvest. Scripture says that whatsoever man sows, that shall he also reap.
Yes.
And if we broaden the understanding around that, it means that whatever it is I want, it also says that it's more blessed to give than it is to receive. So that if I can turn it and I can give those things, I'm talking about the wives now, if I can give those things that I understand from the conversation and from the survey that you did, that the husband needs, if I give those things, then I'm going to get back in kind. So focus less on receiving and focus more on giving. Now, even what that stirs in my mind is an even greater awareness and an even greater deliberateness at the front end of the relationship, in trying to make as best as you can discern to what degree does this person have the basic ingredients, the basic characteristics, thought patterns, the way they manage their emotions, the way they manage themselves, how they function in other relationships. Is this person a giver? And that's not to give him money. Do they give time? Do they have time to give a listening ear? Do they allow others to speak first? Are they very contentious? Or are they very peaceful? In other words, don't wait into year 3 or 4 year 5 to try to, make this change. But as best as you can at the front end, try to discern where does this person stand on these critical issues for me. And then once you get into it, give it your absolute best. Just keep giving it your absolute best. Keep giving it your absolute best. And I'm going to finish off with that part of scripture that says, greater love have no man. So that we talk about love. And so what I'm reinforcing here is the sacrificial nature of love, that it can't be about you exclusively, that it really has to be about, if it is going to function effectively, it has to be about, am I at that place in my mind and in my spirit and in my practice where I'm prepared to give of myself without expecting anything in return, but knowing, all things being equal, that there will be return on my investment.
Minister Roach.
I would. I would add to that as Tony so eloquently said, that relationships are a reflection of the care. Relationships, just like plants, are a reflection of the care that we give them. That if you are willing to make the investment, if you have found someone who is as focused, exceeding the same values, or as committed to working on themselves and pursuing being whole and giving the relationship the care that it needs, because it's a constant investment in yourself and in the relationship, a constant investment in the family and in the family's future. If you have found someone who is willing to do that consistently, so then that is an individual who is moving towards being a prototype, the kind of family that we want within our societies. That is what must be pursued above all else. An individual who is committed to putting and investing the type of care that the family, the relationship, and the marriage needs in order to succeed.
So it's about sacrifice, it's about compromise. We said at the beginning of the program that the men deserve respect. Men want respect and the women want love.
But they're one of the same thing. And that they're one of the same thing.
And that they're one of the same thing. That's right. So with this respect and love, how can you say, final question to you both, and I'll let Tony go first. How can you say to a man, this is how you should communicate this need for respect? How can that man effectively communicate that to his woman?
By being respectful.
Amen.
You can't demand it. If you find yourself demanding it, it means that you're not giving it. Full stop.
Right, full stop. Minister Roach?
And I
communicate that.
I think by also by being respectful, in addition to that, by also just communicating communicating your desire. I find that, and I know that you can't expect something that you've never vocalized. Sometimes some people don't necessarily mean to be harsh or abrasive or rude or dismissive. They don't see the error that they've made. But coming along and saying, well, hon, when you said what you said, or the way that you said it, or the fact that you didn't acknowledge, it did affect me. I thought it was rude. I thought it, sometimes that's all we need. Sometimes someone to communicate things that we may have missed, a blind spot that may be there for us. Someone just in a non-combative way, just communicate your expectation within your relationship.
Wonderful. Now I'm going to give each of you 30 seconds to just wrap up. What do men need from women in order to have a successfully functioning family? And I'm going to ask Minister Roach to go first.
I find in my intro, I talked about how men love and thrive on affirmation. That's maybe for some men manifests as the type of car that he has, or the type of achievements or accolades that he has accomplished over time. I've found that even within the home, when a man loves a woman, nothing is as more valuable to a man to hear that woman say, you're doing a great job. You're a great provider, you're a great protector, you're a great husband, you're a great lover, you're a great friend. Nothing is more valuable to a man within the home constructs to hear the woman that he has married and chosen to do life with affirm him in a positive way. You know what it results in? He wants to be better. He wants to continue. The man wears a proverbial S on his chest. As society puts it, he'll rise to the occasion all the more to deliver every time, as long as he keeps getting someone who is going to come along him and just reaffirm him time and time again.
Right. Thank you. Tony.
I'd say function with this two-part awareness. One, nobody gets all this stuff right. Nobody gets all of this stuff right. And two, exactly right behaviors are made up of approximately right behaviors. Everyone, everyone wants to think that he's the greatest at whatever it is he's doing. What I'm saying here is that don't focus on what he did wrong, but focus on the part that he got right and honor that. Sometimes the best you can do is honor the intention, even though the outcome is not what you intended it to be. Honor the intention. If you can honor the intention, and if you can honor the parts that were gotten right, as Alex just said, that encourages the effort to try again, go and come again. So nobody gets all this stuff right, and exactly right behaviors are incremental steps in approximately right behaviors until we get it exactly right. Honor the intention and honor what was gotten right.
Wonderful. Tony Alton and Minister Alex Roach, thank you so much for sharing with us this evening. Regrettably, our time has ended. I know that we would not have had enough time to discuss this riveting topic. And we say thank you to you, Minister Alex Roach. Ordained at the age of 20, of course, you pastored Revelation Word Christian Center in Barbados, and you would have served with your spiritual father, Apostle Dr. T. Wayne Bishop in Jamaica, and associate pastors at Morning Star Baptist Church in Boston, Massachusetts. Thank you so much, Alex, for sharing with us this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and thank you as well, Tony Alton. You, of course, are a former educator, vice president of sales with a regional life insurance company, bringing a rich background of training, leadership, management, and so much more. Of course, you're certified John Maxwell coach as well. Thank you so much for sharing with us this evening.
Thanks, absolute pleasure.
And I am Crystal J. Paul. Thank you so much to you for being with us this evening for this event. What men need from women in order to run the family successfully, all right? And we want to encourage you to join Family Fest Barbados again on Friday, July 10th, where there'll be the discussion on breaking cycles of abuse, raising the next generation of women. Join us right here on Facebook Live. And don't just join us for that particular event, but there are events all month long. And with these events, if you miss it, you blame yourself, but you can still watch it. Okay, so do that. I'm Krista J. Paul, wishing you a wonderful evening. Thank you and God bless.
We're Family Fest, giving our best, empowering families to be the pillars of society. Family Fest, bringing healing and rest to hurting families, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness. With God on our side, we're marching strong, looking out for hurting children all around, and helping the parents carry on. Standing united, we'll overcome. We're Family Fest, giving our best, empowering families to be the pillars of society. Family Fest, bringing healing and rest to hurting families, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness, bringing help, hope, healing, happiness.